I've seen a lot of really disturbing stuff throughout my life. But nothing from my past experiences could have stopped my hands from shaking so hard right now. I don't know what the hell is going on at this school, in that godforsaken room. I was never the type of guy who got excited for assignments. Whether it be hostages, bomb threats, shooters, the adrenaline rush only lasts for so long. The fear kicks in quickly after. Only got one life, after all. The worst cases are the ones with kids involved. I have a niece who's innocent and carefree beyond comprehension. My skin crawls thinking about her being exposed to those kinds of situations. Safe to say, I wasn't looking forward to whatever task laid ahead of us when we were called in. When we arrived, there were already 6 or 7 police vehicles parked outside, with a massive crowd of evacuated students standing outside. A lot of them looked a combination of utterly shocked and terrified, like they'd just been chased through a cemetery by a machete-wielding demon. As we entered the building, we were getting caught up to date by one of the police officers. But he was hardly any help. We don't know what to do. They're in room 203, but we can't go in there. Can't go in there? What did you mean? Dex, our unit leader, asked him. He stumbled out a mostly incoherent response, skin pale and eyes wide as he did so. From his expression, you'd assume that he'd been to hell, or something of a comparable nature. Obviously, we weren't taking this lightly. We tried getting more information out of him, but he was adamant that he didn't know anything beyond the fact that we couldn't go into the room under any circumstances. We'll figure it out, Dex ended up saying to him, realizing that trying to converse with the guy was getting nowhere. The officer simply nodded his head in response. Not confidently, though. We traversed into the school, and up to the 2nd floor, all alert as hell. In the utter silence, the place was rather eerie. Not that I ever liked school regardless. Once we ascended the stairwell, room 203 was just to our right. It wasn't really what we expected. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just a room. However, it wasn't silent in there. We approached the door cautiously, listening intently to what was going on inside. It sounded like a teacher giving a standard lecture. But obviously, that wouldn't have warranted a school-wide evacuation and subsequent police backup. Jensen, another officer, tapped me on my shoulder, pointing to the crack underneath the door. I didn't see it at first, but a small stream of blood had begun oozing out from underneath. Ah, shit, I thought to myself. Even though I was expecting something like this sooner or later, it was still jarring to see. I wanted to bust down the door right then and there, unleashing a flurry of lead into the perpetrator's skull, but that was obviously impulsive. He might have had hostages, or wired the door to explode upon opening or something of that nature. The police officer's words also stuck to my brain. Sure, he seemed like a maniac, but people don't just become that way through arbitrary means. He'd definitely seen something bad lurking behind the door, and I wasn't eager to find out what. Still, we had to figure out a plan. I tried listening closer, in an attempt to discern what the person was saying. Now, I wasn't sure if they were speaking too quietly or if they were using another language entirely, but I couldn't make out anything explicit. But the more I listened, the more obscure their tone and speech patterns appeared to be. It wasn't like somebody giving a lecture at all. It was more akin to somebody monotonously reciting a series of separate and unrelated passages in succession. Eventually, Dex stepped up, banging on the door. "What's your purpose here? You got any demands? At the moment, we're willing to cooperate. But we can't do that if you don't communicate with us." No response. We tried negotiating for 10 more minutes, but the speaker paid no attention to us, simply continuing their obscure diatribe to the audience of presumably captive and horrified students. "Fuck it," Dex said, frustrated. "Hate dealing with crazy fucks." He pulled out a radio and began talking to another unit. Soon enough, 2 more teams were on their way, one to monitor the windows from outside, and one to take a position in the room directly under 203. We were trying to consider every possible angle here. About 15 minutes later, the outside team showed up. Of course, there was nothing much to report on, given the fact that the windows were boarded up from the inside. Still, they had multiple snipers take vantage points. They were more or less there in case things went absolutely belly up. "This is some bullshit," Axwell, another officer, said. "If they end up never telling us anything, are we just gonna wait here forever? The kids might die of natural causes instead." I wasn't going to be the one to say it, but I sure was thinking it. There were no easy solutions for situations like these. Another 5 minutes elapsed before the ground team showed up, announcing to us over the radio that they were making their way over to the room underneath. The radio crackled once again. "Hey Dex." Dex picked it up. "Yeah. Something wrong?" I don't think we should go inside." "What? What the fuck are you talking about?" He was cut short by something rather jarring. Not a noise. More so the absence of noise. Whoever was inside the room had stopped talking. Dex put the radio down, ready to negotiate once again. "You finished? Can we talk now?" he asked. Suddenly and wholly unexpectedly, the door opened just a crack. Thankfully, I was on the side closest to the doorknob, which meant I wasn't able to see anything inside. But as for the 3 officers who did, including Dex, well, I'm not quite sure what happened to them. I remember feeling a gust of boiling air seeping out and seeing some kind of deep purple glow emanating from within. At a point, I thought I could see Dex's eyes beginning to leak blood, but that may just have been my imagination. All I know is that I blinked a few times from the heat, and a few seconds later, 2 of the officers were gone and the door was closed, leaving Jensen by himself, kneeling on the ground while covering both of his eyes with his hands. We tried getting him to talk, but he wouldn't budge. In fact, he wouldn't move an inch from his bizarre position. At that point, I was beginning to panic hard. This evidently wasn't a normal situation at all. Lee was also frustrated, banging on the door and barking out orders as if whatever fucked up entity lurking in the room cared at all about his grievances. And then he made a drastic mistake. He took his rifle and began breaking the door down with it. He managed to get about halfway through before succumbing to whatever fate Jensen had just before him. I turned around, seeing him also covering his eyes, frozen in the position on the ground. I tried not to look at the purple light flowing out from the holes in the door as I made eye contact with Axwell. We were both ready to get the fuck out of there. I took the lead, rushing towards the stairwell. But after about 2 seconds of running, I heard a scream from behind me. Some kind of large insect-like appendage shrouded in a dark violet smoke had burst through one of the holes, grabbing him by the waist. I reckon that if I were a single second later, it would have done the same to me as well. I tried shooting at the thing, but my bullets simply bounced off. It pulled Axwell in shortly after, demolishing the door with it. The room was completely open now, but I wasn't planning on investigating. Just like that, I was the last man standing. I bolted down the stairwell, and through the first floor hall, only to find the path to the nearest exit blanketed in the same smoke that was coming off of the appendage. There was no way in hell I was going to try traversing through it. I picked up my radio, attempting to contact the floor unit instead. "Where are you guys? What's going on?" A shaky voice answered on the other end. You better hide," Hide? I questioned. Why don't we get our asses out of here instead? I'm looking outside the window right now. Something's happening out there. Given all the commotion, my mind had automatically filtered out the noise. I concentrated, hearing suppressed screams and sporadic gunshots emanating from beyond the walls of the school. "Oh, come on," I muttered. Suddenly and wholly unexpectedly, the door opened just a crack. Thankfully, I was on the side closest to the doorknob, which meant I wasn't able to see anything inside. But as for the 3 officers who did, including Dex, well, I'm not quite sure what happened to them. I remember feeling a gust of boiling air seeping out and seeing some kind of deep purple glow emanating from within. At a point, I thought I could see Dex's eyes beginning to leak blood, but that may just have been my imagination. All I know is that I blinked a few times from the heat, and a few seconds later, 2 of the officers were gone and the door was closed, leaving Jensen by himself, kneeling on the ground while covering both of his eyes with his hands. We tried getting him to talk, but he wouldn't budge. In fact, he wouldn't move an inch from his bizarre position. At that point, I was beginning to panic hard. This evidently wasn't a normal situation at all. Lee was also frustrated, banging on the door and barking out orders as if whatever fucked up entity lurking in the room cared at all about his grievances. And then he made a drastic mistake. He took his rifle and began breaking the door down with it. He managed to get about halfway through before succumbing to whatever fate Jensen had just before him. I turned around, seeing him also covering his eyes, frozen in the position on the ground. I tried not to look at the purple light flowing out from the holes in the door as I made eye contact with Axwell. We were both ready to get the fuck out of there. I took the lead, rushing towards the stairwell. But after about 2 seconds of running, I heard a scream from behind me. Some kind of large insect-like appendage shrouded in a dark violet smoke had burst through one of the holes, grabbing him by the waist. I reckon that if I were a single second later, it would have done the same to me as well. I tried shooting at the thing, but my bullets simply bounced off. It pulled Axwell in shortly after, demolishing the door with it. The room was completely open now, but I wasn't planning on investigating. Just like that, I was the last man standing. I bolted down the stairwell, and through the first floor hall, only to find the path to the nearest exit blanketed in the same smoke that was coming off of the appendage. There was no way in hell I was going to try traversing through it. I picked up my radio, attempting to contact the floor unit instead. "Where are you guys? What's going on?" A shaky voice answered on the other end. You better hide." "Hide?" I questioned. "Why don't we get our asses out of here instead?" I'm looking outside the window right now. Something's happening out there. Given all the commotion, my mind had automatically filtered out the noise. I concentrated, hearing suppressed screams and sporadic gunshots emanating from beyond the walls of the school. "Oh, come on," I muttered. I did as I was told, stumbling into a stray classroom and barricading the door behind me. The room I am in now doesn't have any windows, so I can't tell what's going on outside. I've been checking for news updates on my phone, but nothing. I'm also averse to using my radio to call for help, because it might give my position away. I don't know what the hell's lurking out there in the hallways, but I can certainly hear something moving around. Not sure how far it is, though. I guess I'll just have to wait here until somebody comes for me. Let me tell you something about myself. I'm not an incredibly smart guy. The fact that I've even made it this far is somewhat baffling to me. I mean, I've got endurance, I guess. Not a terrible shot, either. But when it comes to decision making and thinking before I act, well, there's something to be desired there. While waiting in the classroom, I thought I was hearing something in there with me. Of course, I was already on edge, so this pushed me over my limit. I stood still, anticipating absolutely anything. And then I heard it. A sneeze. But my brain didn't register it as a sneeze until afterwards. At the moment, my frenetic mind filtered it through as a threat. It had come from a closet in the corner of the room, so like the jumpy idiot I was, I fired off a reactionary shot, busting a hole in the wooden frame. "Yo, relax." Whoever was inside shouted. They kicked the door open, hands up in a don't fucking shoot position. It was a kid, maybe around 15. "Oh, thank God," he exclaimed upon seeing me. "Cops are here." "First of all, I'm not a cop," I responded. "Second of all, get ready to run. We've made too much noise here." The kid was confused at first, but it didn't take long for him to realize what it meant. I could hear whatever atrocity that had been lurking in the halls now standing right outside, with nothing but a wooden slab separating us. I raised my rifle as it simultaneously busted down the door. It was an inexplicable entity. I'd always pictured what I believed demons or aliens or whatever other extra-dimensional creature would look like in my head. An understanding cultivated through exposure to movies and video games. Still, seeing something like that existing right in front of your face was enough to make the idea of staying sedentary in a room cut off from the rest of the world for the rest of your life not so bad. I can't think of any pre-existing creature on Earth to compare this thing to, so I'll just try describing it. A mass of pulsating fleshy blue spheres joined together atop a mechanical arthropod-esque body, with two bulky robotic arms ending in large claws. Surely some experiment gone horribly awry. Not sure why it was here, though. The kid behind me got a glimpse of it as well, rendering him utterly speechless. The robot centipede creature lurched forward, managing to slash open my protective vest like it was butter. Fortunately, the creature was also a glass cannon. I emptied about half my magazine into its bulbous head, busting open each one of its spheres. It reacted erratically, swinging wildly and undulating its body, destroying the room in the process. I'm pretty sure that I'd blinded it or something. "Come on, kid," I shouted at him. We ran out of the room as the creature continued its destruction. There were a ton of questions swirling around in my head, of course, the main one being where the hell we were heading next. I took out my radio and asked the officer on the other end if things had settled down outside. No response. But from what I could hear, it sure as hell didn't sound like it. "Where are we going?" the kid asked. Beats me, I thought to myself. What are you still doing here? I asked him instead. "Well," he began, "I was in the bathroom when it happened." "Okay, still doesn't explain why you didn't evacuate with the rest of them." Look, I was watching YouTube in there with my headphones in and didn't hear anything, alright? When I came out, everybody was gone, and I was hearing weird shit coming from near the entrance, so I found a place and hid. It happens, you know? Does it really? I thought. But I wasn't going to bother lecturing the kid about it. Not the right time or place. Also, I hardly cared, if I'm being honest. At the moment, we were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Inexplicable, unknown events were transpiring outside, while some kind of creature feature ritual fest was going on inside. I reckoned that we simply needed to find another place to hide until everything blew over. If it was going to blow over at all. I did have my silent reservations about it. I didn't want to admit it either. But the kid being there made things so much more complicated for me. Yeah, not very heroic, I know. We turned a corner, almost running into somebody in the process. I had a mini heart attack as I began raising my rifle again, only to realize that it was another officer. I stopped in an attempt to talk to him, but the guy just ran right past us, with a near catatonic-like expression on his face. Of course, that could only mean one thing. Something was chasing him. Begrudgingly, I took a quick peek down the corridor he'd come from, seeing a 7-foot impossibly muscular humanoid covered in purple flames slowly walking towards us. The ground beneath cracked with each one of its steps. "Where the hell are you going?" it cackled, deep and grating. "You were just getting a preview of the new Empire." Jesus Christ. I didn't let the kid finish his statement, dragging him away and pushing in front of me as I ran. As we navigated through the halls, I was beginning to hear a chorus of voices from the floor above. They sounded like the kids, but obviously not the regular kind. More so ones that had been transformed through the means of otherworldly rituals. Truth be told, I was actually planning on quitting the force sooner or later. I had funds saved and a solid plan to go with it. I never wanted to be a career officer, but I just couldn't pull the trigger. And look where that reluctance got me. Right in the middle of who the fuck knows what. Eventually, we found ourselves in another classroom, once again barricading the door behind us. This one had windows, so I immediately ran over, trying to get a glimpse of what was going on outside. But I couldn't understand what I was seeing. It was pitch black. I checked the time. It was only 4:30 p.m. I assumed that the windows had been covered up. But that idea was quickly discarded when, through the apparent haze outside, a hand pressed up on the glass. A hand with a bloodshot eye at the center of the palm. It pressed harder, causing a web of cracks to form. At that moment, it seemed like there was nowhere safe to go. Nowhere to hide. I dragged the kid out of the room once again, only to find the colossal fireman waiting for us there. He was grabbing the officer that had been running away earlier by the neck, choking the life out of him. I emptied the rest of my bullets into the blazing monstrosity, causing said monstrosity to flinch only slightly. He chuckled, low and throaty, as he dropped the officer's lifeless body to the ground. Guns are something, aren't they? A shitty remnant of the old world. He stepped forward, throwing a punch directly at me. Despite using both of my forearms in a cross-guard position to block, the impact still sent me flying into the lockers, rattling my bones and singing my uniform, along with the skin underneath. The kid screamed, darting away from the scene. A good decision at the moment. But at the same time, well, he was pretty much screwed. I wasn't in much of a better position myself, trying to find my feet after being staggered by a single punch. The fireman continued to approach me, eyes fanatic, with a grin that was beyond deranged as the flames roared across his body. I was still trying to pull myself together as he got within a few meters of me. But then, almost out of nowhere, his head was cranked to the side by a swift, blurry fist, sending him reeling. I looked over to the adjacent corridor, seeing a brawny figure wearing a suit of black body armor and a skull-like mask. He stood there, fist outstretched, with small purple embers resting atop his knuckles from the impact. "Hey there," he said through the holes in his mask. "I'm the backup." Did this guy just say backup? It was a bizarre thing to consider, since I thought we were supposed to be the backup. But then again, stranger things have happened. In fact, stranger things were actively happening. Backup? What backup? The armored beefcake ignored my question, putting his attention back on the fireman instead. Not that I minded that decision, to be fair. The fireman jolted back up, releasing a vortex of flames that nearly singed my eyebrows off. "Ugh!" it screamed. "The new world will have no place for fodder like you. This is..." He was interrupted by another bulky fist being drilled into his jaw, rendering him immediately unconscious. The backup nonchalantly shook the flames off of his hand, dusting stray embers from his clothes in the process. Weird how the cool-looking ones usually end up being weak. Seemed like a level 3 threat. Level 3 what? What is this? Who are you? I launched a series of feverish questions at him. He scratched his face through an opening in his mask. If I tell you, I'm gonna have to brainwipe you. The response froze me for a second. And then he burst out laughing. Nah, I'm kidding. I wouldn't be the one to do it. The suits would. What? So who are you? I'm Kaz. U.S. Military. Holy Soldier Division. Class 2. What the hell did you even just say? I responded, utterly baffled. He chuckled. Wouldn't expect you to know about it. They brainwipe everybody who does, after all. Okay. I said, trying to compose myself. So what's going on here? Your guess is as good as mine, buddy. They call me up for these weird missions all the time. They've labeled them unique situations requiring divine intervention. Divine? Holy. What's all that shit about? Well, they can't really explain our abilities. So they've put it on God. He made air quotes with his fingers as he said the G word. Your abilities? Like what? As I finished the question, a writhing, purple tentacle broke through the roof, dripping caustic liquid that dissolved the floor beneath. That looks like a level 6, he turned back to face me. You can stay and find out. But I wouldn't recommend that. It might get a bit hectic. I didn't take his advice at first, thinking that I'd die instantly if I tried going off by myself. I stayed and watched as the tentacle descended further, furiously wrapping itself around Kaz's torso. But instead of being dissolved, he began attempting to rip the appendage apart with his own bare hands. During the scuffle, a small drop of the liquid found its way onto my arm. It stung like hell as it seeped into my tissue, feeling like a boiling needle being drilled into your skin. As soon as that happened, I was out of there. But of course, I still had no idea where I was going. I could hear even more commotion going on outside, including some kind of booming robotic voice, followed by the sounds of rocket launchers. Eventually, I found what I believed to be another officer, standing at the end of a hallway with his back turned to me. Hey! I called out, half whispering, hoping to draw zero attention. When he didn't turn around, I began walking towards him. About 3 steps in, the rational part of my brain began pulsating, causing me to stop and consider my situation. Yeah, there's no way this guy's gonna be normal, I thought. My conjecture was proved right when he turned around, revealing a mangled face resembling the rough design of a conventional jack-o'-lantern. He was also holding glowing, purple knife. The former cop let out a giggle so painfully unnatural to the point where it felt like fingers were running down my back. But I quickly realized that it wasn't the laugh that spurred that odd sensation. Somebody was literally touching my back. I whipped my head around, seeing a tall, pale man dressed in a charcoal black suit with violet, swirling cyclones for eyes. Does you understand now? Do you sense your ultimate duty? He said to me, smiling like a lunatic. You too could be a part of the new world as one of my messengers. Messengers for what? I asked, trying to stall for time as I inched towards an adjacent hallway to run down. For me, of course. The prophet. The new Messiah. I don't know. I stammered out, trying to avoid his hair-raising glare. Or I could just send you to hell right now. So turn into a demonic jack-o'-lantern or die. Both fantastic options, really. Luckily for me, a familiar figure staggered into view a few moments later. It was Kaz, looking like he'd been through a meat grinder. "Geez, that was a tough," he said, breathing heavy. He bent over for a moment, before looking up at the pale man. "Oh shit. This fucker again," he muttered. The pale man's face devolved into an explicitly malicious grimace upon seeing Kaz. "A heretic calling himself holy. You dissidents should have killed me when you had the chance." Kaz sighed. "Nobody's calling themselves holy. For the last time, that's just the title they gave me, you fucking idiot." The pale man let out an ominous chuckle, before levitating. "Do not take my name in vain, heretic." Kaz looked over at me. "Hey buddy, you better get out of here. I'm only gonna be able to keep him occupied for a few minutes. This asshole's a level 10. I still had no idea what that meant, but it sure as hell didn't sound good. In any case, I ran away from the situation as the two clashed behind me. As much as I hated the situation, I hated my weakness even more. Despite my growing resentment for the job, one thing that kept me going was the general perception of the SWAT as some badass protectors of the public. But I hadn't saved anybody since entering the school. In fact, the kid. God damn it, the kid. I was gonna let him die here, wasn't I? Not that I could do much, though. I wasn't so safe myself, being chased by the blade-wielding officer. But what did I spend all those years training for? I've been in life or death situations before. Did I run then? Fuck no. So why was I running now? Just because paranormal factors were being thrown into the mix? I laughed at myself, reflecting on my cowardice. I stopped running and drew my own knife. Time to deal with this myself, I thought. Time to become what the public thinks I am. I stepped forward as the demon officer rushed me. I managed to dodge his first swing, giving me an explosion in confidence. I capitalized on the adrenaline rush, slamming my knife into the back of his head. But then the knife shattered upon impact and my heart subsequently dropped. The officer turned around, shoving me about 20 meters back. My whole body was stinging as I pushed myself back up. Yeah. Never mind. Fuck it. I was still trying to find my balance as the officer continued striding towards me. Like I've said before, near-death experiences were hardly alien to me. But in every previous situation, my life still felt like it was in my own hands. As if I had at least a marginal degree of control over my fate. But at that moment, the prospect of death felt imminent. And it was the scariest moment of my life. As the distance between us continued closing, I spotted two figures turning the corner at the other end of the hall. I thought they were just more creatures at first. But then I realized they weren't moving like creatures. And they sure didn't look the part either. I picked up my pace, quickly stumbling to a stop right in front of them. It was a man and a woman, both appearing to be in their mid-20s. The man was tall and built, sporting what appeared to be a mechanical exoskeleton over a tank top and cargo pants, while the woman was of a more slender physique, wearing a thick jacket and tight black shorts. She also had a pair of large, robotic goggles around her head. "Whoa there," the man said in a wholly unfamiliar accent. "You all right?" Out of breath, I replied mostly incoherently, simply pointing at the officer over my shoulder. The woman's expression remained stagnant as she drew a ridiculously large pistol from her jacket, firing off a round that caused my ears to ring for around half a minute. But when I turned around, the officer's entire upper body had been obliterated. "Well, that'll do it," she said, her accent being the same as the man's. "Now, maybe you can help us out and we'll call it even. You see, we're looking for a dickhead named Trent Risen. He also calls himself the Messiah or something. He's got a big bounty on his head that we'd really like to grab before anybody else does. Now, have you seen him around? I had a decision to make here. I could have lied to the bounty hunters, claiming that I had no idea where Trent was, in order to avoid whatever hellish clash they would have engaged in. But at the same time, I was thinking that they'd actually be able to take him out, which would have meant at least one huge problem being solved. Also, it was pretty obvious that hiding by myself would only be a temporary reprieve. Something would find and kill me eventually. There was obviously no chance of me defeating the Messiah by myself. But the bounty hunters, well, I was hopeful. With that in mind, I began retracing my steps, leading the two towards the corridor where Trent and Kaz were about to throw down, hoping that the latter had at least managed to weaken the former. However, as soon as we turned our first corner, we came across 5 middle school-aged kids. They all had a faint, dark purple smoke rising up from their bodies, with blacked-out eyes and fang-like teeth. I suppose the assumption could be made that they might have been possessed. What made it even more complicated was the fact that they were kids. Could we really just kill them? "All right," I said. "Let's think of a way to incapacitate and restrain them." I acted first, attempting to grab one of the kids and put them in a chokehold. Like I said, I'm not the smartest guy. As soon as I got close, the kid grabbed me by the arm and swung me into the lockers with beast-like strength. The bounty hunter simply laughed in response. After wiping an amused tear from his eye, the man stepped forward, drawing an extremely large blade from his exoskeleton. He rushed forward at a dizzying speed, slicing each of their heads off in immediate succession. "All right," he said, completely unfazed by what he'd just done. "Let's go." "Why did you?" I began stammering out. "They were kids. We could have fucking what?" the woman said, stepping by me. "Gotten your ass ripped apart by them?" And then she scoffed. "Don't tell me you were thinking they could be changed back. It really doesn't work like that." I stood there for a second, horrified by their blatant cruelty. But the realization quickly dawned on me. What else could we have done? It wasn't so much that I was disturbed by what they'd done. That part seemed inevitable. It was more so the attitude they displayed whilst doing it. "Well?" the man asked me. "You coming or what? We'll ditch you right here if you don't move." I forced myself to get over it, under the reasoning that I was going to forget that any of this had happened. Well, try to forget. The idea of a brain wipe was sounding pretty good at that moment. When we got to the corridor where I'd seen Trent last, it was empty. No bodies, even. Just a lot bloodstains on the ground. The male hunter sighed. "Well, damn. Really hope that fucker's still alive." As we were about to head off to keep searching, a voice called out from behind us, "What's going on over here?" It was deep and gravelly, in a tone that was both reserved and implicitly aggressive. We turned around, seeing an older man, maybe mid-40s, clad in dark green tactical gear. His hair was cut short, and one of his eyes had a gnarly scar running through it. He chewed on his cigar, seemingly analyzing the three of us. "Are you my targets?" he asked, probably not expecting an answer. The male hunter shook his head. "Don't think so. Who the fuck are you?" "Calhoun," the man responded. "Class 1 holy soldier." "Another one?" I thought to myself. "Let's see," he continued. "I'm sensing no power coming from him," he said, pointing towards me. "But you too. What's your business here?" He gestured towards the hunters. "Our business?" the woman spoke up. "Nothing to do with you." Calhoun sneered, before dropping his cigar and stomping on it. "You are impeding official U.S. military business. I fucking hate bounty hunters. Get a real job." The male hunter sneered back as he stepped forward. "What? Like yours? You're a real saint, you simpering puppet." Calhoun's lips curled into a really unpleasant smirk. "Good. Throw the first punch. Makes it even better for me." And then, before I could say anything at all, they were fighting. Each of their swings and kicks were devastating, shattering the ground and busting open metal lockers with each missed strike. It truly was a clash between titans. And it was infuriating to watch, given the situation. "What the hell are you guys doing?" I called out. "Can't this fucking wait?" I turned to the female hunter, expecting her to be some voice of reason. But of course, she was also insane, watching the fight with a huge smile plastered onto her face. "Oh God," was all I could mutter out. While the fight had started off pretty even, Calhoun was quickly gaining the upper hand. He stopped one of the male hunter's slashes by grabbing the blade. "You don't have any experience, do you, boy?" he said, before snapping it off and plunging it into one of the hunter's eyes. Despite the grievous injury, the hunter simply let out an exasperated grunt and persisted forward. He began swinging with his naked fists, managing to connect a few times with Calhoun's ribs. But the holy solitaire hardly seemed affected, grabbing the hunter by the head and drilling his knee upwards, shattering the jaw. Calhoun finished him off by pulling out an extremely sawed-off shotgun and blasting the hunter's torso to hell. I could only watch in abject shock as the inexplicable scene unfolded in front of me. But I'd be lying if I didn't admit to being somewhat astonished by the whole thing. I was nearly in a state of morbid awe. I looked at the female hunter, expecting her to be absolutely fuming. Instead, she just sighed, before drawing her own gun and immediately blasting a shot at Calhoun. Point blank, I thought. There's no way I looked up, seeing Calhoun with his fist outstretched, the veins on his hands pulsating. He opened his hand, dropping a massive, bloody bullet to the ground. "Fuck. That hurt," he remarked. The woman reholstered her weapon, appearing to be somewhat worried. "All right, you old bastard," she muttered, sounding increasingly unhinged. She removed her goggles, revealing a pair of large, bright red eyes underneath. She grunted, before releasing what could only be described as a beam of optic energy. The blast ripped through everything in its path, as she followed Calhoun with it. At a point, it was inches away from cutting me in half, had I not jumped. But no dice for her. The guy was just too fast on top of his overwhelming strength. He evaded her blasts with ease, before he rushed forward, decapitating her with one chop to the neck. Her head went flying, before landing at my feet. It was a sight that caused me to gag. I've seen my fair share of rough stuff. But the state I'm located in is one of the safest in America. Maybe if I was based in a rougher place, my resolve would have been higher. But that just wasn't the case here. Calhoun turned to look at me, wiping blood from his hands. "SWAT, huh? I can respect it. You're still getting brain wiped after everything's said and done, though." I opened my mouth, searching for a response. But there just wasn't anything I could force myself to say. "Count yourself lucky," he said, in response to my apparent apprehension. "It'd be easier for me to kill you on the spot. I'm letting you live out of the kindness of my heart." That seems like faulty logic, I thought to myself. But whatever. There was obviously no use arguing with the guy. "What hell's going on outside? Is it safe?" I asked him. Calhoun chuckled, somewhat condescendingly. "You don't want to see what's going on outside." Obviously, I wasn't terribly excited at the prospect of some state-ordained brain-wiping procedure, but at the moment, I was just trying to survive. I began following Calhoun as he began traversing through the corridors. "Where are we going?" I asked him. "Looking for the Messiah," he responded. "Once I get rid of him, we can go home." It was something that seemed far easier said than done. But I really had no other option than to follow the guy. He seemed strong enough, after all. He was shouting up a storm as he walked through the halls, in an attempt to provoke Trent to come out. It was something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. We were drawing too much damn attention. Although, it didn't seem to matter much, since Calhoun either punched or shot a hole through any creature that attacked us. After a few minutes of this, somebody took the bait and met us in a hallway. But it wasn't Trent. It was a tall, wiry man with dark, slick-back hair, wearing a leather jacket and tight jeans. What now? I thought to myself. Another government guy? More bounty hunters? "You are causing quite the ruckus out here," the man said, walking forward. "Looking for somebody?" "Yeah," Calhoun responded. "Don't think it's you, though. I can tell that you're no stronger than this guy," he said, gesturing towards me. The man smirked. "Cool ability. I can tell you're pretty strong as well." Calhoun scowled, already annoyed at the conversation. "Where's Trent? You another one of his lackeys? I thought he only recruited the strong. Can't imagine he'd choose fodder like you." "Yeah," the man smirked. "Can't imagine it either." As soon as he finished the statement, thick veins beginning to bulging out of his neck. He stuck his arm out to the side, and before I could blink, it had morphed into a terrifyingly familiar sight. It was the same insect-like appendage that had grabbed Axwell earlier. I could see Calhoun's eyes beginning to widen upon realizing his misjudgment. He took a fighting stance, rushing the man faster and more ferociously than he did the female hunter. The man swung at him, but Calhoun was swift enough to dodge the strike, managing to punch a hole through the man's torso. But instead of reeling in pain, the man simply continued grinning. "Tough guy, huh? Good for you." Still with a gaping hole in his stomach, the man extended his other arm, transforming it into some kind of massive fleshy, veiny axe. He swung it forward, managing to slice a portion of Calhoun's forearm off, who barely managed to dodge what would have been a fatal blow. "Come on," the man said nonchalantly. "Don't force my hand here." As he said this, I could see the hole in his stomach beginning to regenerate. It was a fucked up sight, to say the least. But it didn't end there. The man's legs seemed to revert back into his torso, with a collection of long, arachnid-esque legs quickly popping out in their place. "This feels as gross as it looks, you know." At that point, he'd become far faster than Calhoun. He crawled onto the walls and ceiling, before splitting Calhoun's head down the middle with his hand axe. When he landed back on the floor, he'd returned to his normal human self once again. And then he turned to face me. "Look at that. My jacket's ruined." I was running before he'd finished his sentence. However, he didn't seem to be putting much effort into the chase, whistling as he marched behind me, sustaining a moderate pace at best. I ran like hell for around 10 minutes, evading stray creatures in the process. At a point, I found an empty computer lab and barricaded myself in there. It didn't take long for the man to find me, though. But for whatever reason, he didn't barge in immediately. Instead, he's talking to me through the door, telling me that no matter what I do, I'm going to be transformed into one of Trent's messengers. That he has a quota to fill. Fuck, he just broke in. The final stage of grief is acceptance. The obscure man was approaching me with a calm demeanor, which made him even more frightening. "Can't we just skip the other 4? There's only 2 outcomes for you here." I didn't respond, causing him to sigh. It was less of an attempt at defiance and more to do with me being at a loss for words. Okay. How about I introduce myself? Get us acquainted. I'm Shen. You. Pete. I told him. Okay, Pete. Believe me when I tell you that there will not be another chance like this for you. Right now, Trent's in a good mood. But once he finishes converting the rest of schoolchildren into cannon fodder for his army, he's gonna go on a fucking rampage. At that point, it'll be too late for you. He's not entirely there in the head, so you can't really try reasoning with him, you know? Besides, I'm trying to get on his good side by converting competent soldiers. If you're trying to recruit people, then why'd you kill Axwell? I asked him, feeling a momentary hint of anger amongst my general shock. He shook his head. Who? Look, if I killed one of your cop buddies, then boo-hoo. Like I'd even give a semblance of a fuck. I'm only after the strong anyway. I scoffed. Well, I don't know what the hell you want with me, then. You should have tried recruiting that guy you just killed. He seemed strong. Shen stood up, letting out a sigh. Sure, that meat had a decent physical strength. But look where that got him. I chopped his head like a melon. And look at you, you're still alive. You could do the same to me, I responded. How am I different? Listen, you dense fucker. It's true that I could kill you right now. But I'm choosing not to. Fuck what you think being strong means. The stuff you've been fed by Hollywood and the media and shit. That's all nonsense. The strong are the ones that end up surviving. Self-preservation is the only thing that matters. If you can punch holes through buildings but end up getting taken out by a bigger fish right after, how are you anything but weak? He slammed his hand down on my shoulder in what I assume was supposed to be an encouraging pat. However, I could feel it dislocate from the impact. You are still alive, huh? Have some confidence in yourself. I reeled from the pain, causing Shen to chuckle. I can't lie, though. You normal humans sure are fragile. He put his hand back on my shoulder, softer this time, and I could feel my bones shifting back into place, with my pain being alleviated at the same time. I was stunned, hardly comprehending what had just happened. What the hell did you just do? I asked him. Not only does my own body regenerate, he responded. I can heal others as well. I'm basically Jesus, aren't I? Maybe I should be calling myself the Messiah instead. Is there a difference between the two? I dunno. But don't get too excited. I stand by what I said earlier. There's only two options for you. Either you willingly undergo the transformation right now, or I beat you down until you do. What do you? Before I could finish my question, he stomped down, effortlessly crushing my kneecap. I always thought I had a decent enough pain tolerance, but I never could have been prepared for something like this. Enough? You wanna come with me now? But despite the excruciating, overwhelming pain, I didn't concede. For whatever esoteric reason, my mind was stubborn, barring me from giving in. Maybe I really just hated the idea of turning into some demon creature. Or maybe it was something else. Another driving force I couldn't explicitly identify. Well, shit, he chuckled. One leg is usually all it takes. But don't think I'm just gonna heal you up and let you go like that, eh? Why are you doing this? Why are you following that guy? I asked him through the pain, hoping to stall more than anything else. You really think that guy's some savior? Shen chuckled. I'm not a fucking idiot, so of course not. Trent's just an overpowered lunatic. Unlike him, I'm not some clown-tier cartoon villain. I'm just rational. But right now, I stand zero chance if I were to take him on. If you can't beat him, then join them until you can beat them. What's his goal? What's he even trying to do? I asked. Trent, I mean. Shen responded. Well, what happens when a really psychotic guy gains godlike powers through an arcane ritual with roots dating back to the inception of mankind? One that involved killing over 250 people, each in an extremely obscure manner, over the course of 15 years? As you can see, shit hits the fan, and the rest of us end up scrambling. He squatted down, getting eye level with me. I told you, didn't I? When the storm hits, the strong always find a way to survive. It's a simple rule. Do you understand? He smiled when I refused to respond. Let's see just how long this tenacity lasts. One of his arms abruptly transformed into a slimy, xenomorph-like mouth with rows upon rows of jagged teeth. Now this is going to hurt. A lot. But all you need to say is a few words to make it all stop. I can only remember the following half hour as a bloody blur. The pain was followed by moments of fleeting numbness, only to return with even more intensity. Shen must have dealt me 50 fatal blows, only to heal them up and repeat the process right after. He'd slice me in half at the torso, stop on my ribs, crush my legs, etc. At a point, I lost consciousness after choking on my own blood, only to be awakened seconds later with my jaw dislocated. What's the principle behind this persistence? You got a chip on your shoulder or something? He asked me. I could only wheeze in response. Despite getting dangerously close to my breaking point, I was operating under the logic that there was no point in giving in if I'd already been pushed so far. Live on your feet or just fucking die. My old man's words popped into my head. He'd always been kind of an asshole, but at the moment, I clung onto the advice. The whole situation was ridiculous. The torture was simply an attempt to get me to convert, and I couldn't fathom why the guy seemed so hung up on it. But the further he went, the more my mind was beginning to adapt. The pain was nearly impossible to endure for the first few minutes. After 10 minutes, it was only somewhat excruciating. After 20, I was beginning to get used to it. After 30, I was laughing. It was as if a switch had flipped in my brain. Maybe he really had driven me to some transitory state of madness. My rationality had faded, with the torture session suddenly seeming utterly absurd as opposed to anything else. Even Shen seemed surprised at my reaction. Oh, come on, he sighed. This is getting frustrating. Did I mess your brain up? I made sure not to touch it. He furrowed his brow. Or is this just your inner willpower manifesting? Maybe you've got some shit going on that I'm not aware of. His arms reverted back to their normal form from the flesh saws he'd been using to hack me up with. Despite him fully healing me up, the pain still lingered throughout my entire body. Either way, this isn't gonna work. He stretched his arms out, before fixing his blood-stained collar. My blood, mind you. Guess I'll just have to let you go. Those words were enough to snap me back into reality. In my excitement, I tried to stop myself from saying something stupid that might change his mind. But like I said, I'm an idiot. Yeah. Good. I stammered out. He gave me a confused squint before explaining his decision. The transformation likely wouldn't have worked on you regardless. You could say I was testing you out there. Those with strong enough wills end up resisting it. No point in trying to convert somebody who can't be converted. Can't say you haven't earned my respect, though. Guess I'll leave it like this. He turned and began heading towards the door. Shit's still pretty crazy out there. Let's see if you can survive this. He grinned at me once more. If you manage to make it out of here alive, I might just have to admit that you're stronger than me. Also, don't tell Trent that I let you go. If you see him, of course. And with that, he was gone, leaving me with a faint, stinging sensation throughout my body. What a fucking weirdo, I thought to myself. But I was still alive, now more determined than ever to keep it that way. I stayed put until my senses had stabilized, only leaving when a veiny ice stalk burst through the ground in front of me. Shen was right. It was still as dangerous as ever. I traversed through the area, avoiding any potential conflicts, until I came across somebody familiar in one of the corridors. A large man wearing heavily damaged armor and a skull mask. "Kaz?" I called out to him. The bulky figure turned around. "Oh. It's you. What happened? Your clothes are all torn up." "Yeah," I began. "We need to get out of here." Kaz nodded, seemingly clutching his chest in pain. "Couldn't agree more." "What happened to you?" I asked, approaching him. "Did you beat Trent?" He shook his head. "Not even close. He ripped one of my hearts out a few seconds after you left." "Oh, that sucks," and then I thought about what he'd said. "Wait, one of them?" He nodded. "I had 4. 3 now. I just pretended to play dead." I nodded, not really needing or wanting a further explanation. "I already called it in," he continued. "We can't deal with this guy. Nobody in our division can, except for one. They're sending in the big gun." "And who's that?" Kaz let out a big exhale. "Judas." The tone in his voice as he said it was rather alarming. Almost as if he were naming the devil himself. "So this Judas guy, he's gonna come and fix all this?" "Well, he'll probably be able to kill Trent. The problem is, he'll probably kill everybody else in the process. He's like a somewhat sentient natural disaster. Any place he gets to assigned to usually ends up getting wiped off the face of the earth. In fact, there's a good chance that every single person in this town will die if the fight lasts long enough. The cover-up process gets complicated afterwards. Glad I'm not a desk guy. But yeah, you could say that he's quite the nuisance. And that's why we gotta get the hell out of here before he shows up. I used to have 6 hearts, you know? But then I got caught up in the aftermath of one of his little outings." Kaz started walking and I followed. "Well, if this guy's so volatile, then why does the government let him out?" "Obviously, for situations like these," Kaz responded. "They are willing to sacrifice a smaller town as opposed to nuking the whole place or something. And honestly, I'm willing to bet that Trent could survive a nuke. He'll probably eventually wipe out a good portion of the earth if we don't kill him now. Let's call Judas a necessary disaster." "Jesus," I muttered. "Also," he continued, "the government has no way of controlling him regardless. At the moment, they've somewhat managed to brainwash him into embracing good old American ideals. But I reckon he could change his mind and snap at any moment. And then we're all done for. Better to get on his good side while we can." "So what the hell is this guy then?" I asked. "Who knows," Kaz responded. "Nobody but the top echelon of officials with the highest clearance have any info about him. Kinda scary to think about. Now, I'd never been a conspiracy theory buff, but I did my fair share of research into the matter. But even then, I never could have imagined something like this." After about 5 minutes of walking, Kaz said he needed to rest for a bit, given his injuries. "We've taken refuge in another classroom ever since. There's a rotting corpse in here, but every other room we'd come across had been occupied by something far worse. Right now, we're trying to figure something out. A plan, so to speak. Kaz estimates that we have between 40 minutes to 2 hours before Judas arrives. This isn't even a matter of hiding until backup arrives anymore. The situation has become immeasurably fucked, and we need to find a way out of here. That's the new objective. But given the circumstances, that may be tough." I began wondering how a body would already be rotting if Trent had invaded only some hours prior. And then the corpse stood up. I'm not sure what I was even thinking. That thing hardly ever resembled a human to begin with. The entity that I thought had been a simple corpse began writhing its way up, its skin comparable in appearance to an amalgamation of thousands of tiny, shifting, brownish-gray cells, while its limbs were strung together by thick, pulsing veins. Its face began morphing, eventually taking on the appearance of a human. Not just a regular person, though. A really good-looking one. It was as if somebody stitched the head of a runway model onto a giant, deformed alien. What's the threat level on that thing? Pretty weak, right? I asked Kaz, hoping to hear 1 or 2. That might be a 5. Or 6. I cursed under my breath. Like moths drawn to a candle. The demon model began speaking. Humanity goes out of its way to seek pure beauty, disturbing my beautiful slumber in the process. But they don't deserve to bask in the presence of this beauty. The paragon of aesthetics, Kalos, will now exterminate you disgusting mongrels. We're the disgusting ones? I thought to myself. But before we could actually say anything, he rushed forward, a large, ghastly hand outstretched. One strike from him likely would have scrambled my organs. Luckily, Kaz intercepted him before that could happen, drilling his fist into Kalos's chest. The impact sent him flying into a wall, but also managed to tear apart the skin on Kaz's knuckles in the process. "God damn it," he said, shaking his hand. "What the hell is your body made out of? It doesn't end with you freaks, does it?" Kalos chuckled as he dislodged himself from the wall. There was now a deep hole in his chest, but he didn't seem to mind it too much. "Lucky you didn't aim for my face," he said. "You scum would have been begging me for death." He was interrupted by another punch from Kaz, but managed to block it with both arms this time. That one was undoubtedly headed for his face. "Pretty good reflexes," Kaz said. "I love it when they start rambling." Kalos grimaced in anger. "You are gonna regret being so smug. Subhumans should know their place. I could obliterate you fools right now, but I'll leave the dirty work to Trent." He spat on the ground in front of us before storming out of the room. I breathed a sigh of relief in response. "Could you have taken him?" I asked out of curiosity. "Maybe," he responded. "But let's not call that lucky. We might have to deal with him later." That whole situation had taken up about 5 minutes. We couldn't afford to waste any more time, immediately darting out of the room right after. "What are we gonna do?" I asked him as we ran. "We're gonna brave it outside. When we get there, just close your eyes and keep running like hell." From beyond the walls of the school, I could hear a chorus of witch-like shrieks, along with bursts of high-pitched maniacal laughter. Safe to say, my options were pretty shitty. It was either face whatever the hell lay outside or deal with a mysterious but apparently devastating Judas. I believe they call that going up shit creek without a paddle. Except the water is acid. And the butt is just a rotting horse carcass. As we got closer to one of the exit doors, still blanketed in the purple smoke, mind you, the floors began rumbling below us. Kaz was right. There was no end to this incomprehensible nightmare. A shadow began casting itself from one of adjacent corridors ahead, getting exponentially larger with every second. We skidded to a stop before making contact with whatever the hell was coming. A monstrously sized canine scraped the walls and ceilings as it crashed into our path. I suppose canine would have been the best way to describe the thing. It hardly resembled any earthly creature at all, but it ran on 4 legs and stuck out its tongue a lot. A tongue. Covered in additional mouths lined with spike-like teeth. A tongue dripping fluid that dissolved the floor beneath. Charcoal black fur with red eyes blinking all over. Bones shaped like saws located at every joint. 4 larger eyes on its head that jutted outwards, twisting and turning to scope out the environment. I could hear Kaz chuckle in utter disbelief. "Ha! There, boy," he muttered. There was also a person riding atop the bizarre beast. He was a pale, skinny, naked fellow with disheveled hair and wild eyes. "My boy's hungry, isn't he?" The psychopath talked to his apparent pet in a manner comparable to the way a suburban mom would talk to her cat. "Look, Brando," he said, pointing towards us with a bony, shaking finger. "Walking food." We didn't actually stick around to hear what he said at the end, but I imagine that it would have been something like that. If we were running hard before, we were pushing ourselves to the brink now. Kaz was faster than me, of course. But I didn't lag behind hard enough to warrant him carrying me or something. My daily 5-mile runs weren't for nothing. Eventually, we made it to a stairway, scrambling our way up with no room to spare. Brando's head got stuck in the doorway as it tried to swallow us. I nearly had a heart attack when I turned around, only to see its eyes following us up the stairs. Fortunately, Kaz punched it away. When we got up, we were drenched in cold sweat. Kaz took off his mask, which was half broken, revealing a blonde-haired blue-eyed Balakli in his late 20s underneath. Not really what I was expecting, to be honest. He let out what sounded like a frustrated exhale as he ran his hands through his hair. "We've made some mistakes in our lives, haven't we?" "What did you mean?" I asked him. He looked up at me, eyes squinted in disbelief. "Look at where the fuck we are. Where we voluntarily chose to be." At that moment, I had nothing to say in response. We rested for a few more moments before entering the corridor ahead of us. We couldn't go back down, after all. Brando was still stuck. As soon as I stepped into the hall, I was met with a familiar sight. Room 203. The door was now busted open, along with the surrounding walls. The purple light was as blinding as ever, and I tried my best not to stare too much. From inside, we could hear a cacophony of cries mixed with a deeper, chanting voice. It took me a second to realize that the cries definitely belonged to the remaining schoolchildren. And one of them sounded awfully familiar. "All right," Kaz said. "Just run right past the door. No looking. Full speed. We'll find another way out." "But," I began the kids. "There. Don't think about doing anything stupid." Kaz interrupted me. "There's no guarantee that we leave and get out of here alive. Don't make this shit even more complicated than it is. We were both given tasks that we had no chance of succeeding in. It's not our fault. But now we need to run." Obviously, he was right. But I didn't want him to be. I rarely tell anybody the true reason why I decided to join law enforcement. It really wasn't for any kind of recognition. Not so I could pretend to be some swashbuckling badass either, no matter how much I lied to myself about it. Certainly not for the pay. It was because I had a strong resolve, spurred on by one fateful incident. Back in my university days, I used to be part of a baseball club. One that held late matches that lasted well into the night. One of those nights, I was walking back to my apartment at around 1 a.m., when I heard a cry that was quickly muffled coming from a sedan parked on the side of the road. As soon as I heard it, I stopped. Now, I was no hero. I still don't think I am. Truly nobody special. I was just a simple person with simple ideals. Ones that I never had a reason to act on until that night. Before that, I wouldn't have believed that I had it in me. We all fantasize about doing these things, but when the time comes to act, our rationality and self-preservation instincts spar us from doing so. But sometimes, raw passion and idealism manages to override everything. Long story short, I shattered the sedan's tinted windows with my bat, before nearly bludgeoning a human trafficker's head in. I'm sure it was something that the 13-year-old girl being bound and gagged in the back couldn't have forgotten, but hey. It was hard for me to stop myself. And she'd already seen far worse. Afterwards, the girl's parents hugged me whilst bawling their eyes out. That was the first time in my life I felt genuinely fulfilled with myself. It was a good thing that I didn't kill the guy as well. They managed to interrogate the names of other traffickers involved in locations where the kidnapped were being held out of him. I enrolled in the police academy a year later, after I'd graduated college. Those memories flooded back into my mind at a rapid pace. A reminder of my resolve. The real reason why I was in this situation in the first place. It was true that I'd lost my passion over the stagnant years. But all it took was one push to bring it all back. At that point, I was completely unarmed, save for 2 stun grenades and the taser on my belt. But that didn't stop me from rushing right in. Never said I was smart, did I? Kaz cursed at me from behind, running to catch up. Obviously, I had no idea what to expect upon entering that room. But there was only one detail that I needed to know. There were kids in need of help.